A pleasant morning to everyone, to our distinguished panelists, to our esteemed instructor, to our fellow researchers, and to everyone who has taken their time to be with us today. Thank you for your presence. I am Angelica May Iriquina, and together with me is Mr. John Philip Elliott, Ms. Lovely May Lopez, and Ms. Resame Fernandez. We are honored to present our study titled White Magic, Demonic or Evil. Discourse and dissonance analysis of the divergent explanatory models of Barang victims in Carmen and Pilar Bohol. Under the guidance and supervision of Mr. Mark Steven Bandan, we aim to present a thought-provoking exploration of how different individuals and communities construct meaning and beliefs around the phenomenon of Barang. Now let's move on to the theoretical framework. On my left-hand side, we can see the theories incorporated into our study. First is the power knowledge, Foucault 2020. Beliefs in supernatural shapes perceptions of illnesses and death through socially constructed knowledge and power dynamics. Michel Foucault's work, particularly Discipline and Punish 1975, and the History of Sexuality 1976, provides a foundational lens for understanding how power and knowledge are intertwined. Foucault argues that power isn't just repressive but also productive, as it shapes what counts as legitimate knowledge and reinforces social norms. In his analysis, disciplinary mechanisms through surveillance, normalization, and regulation construct social reality. When applied to Barang, Foucault's framework reveals how supernatural interpretations of illness and death functions as instruments. Second theory, we have the dissonance theory. This was originally coined by Leon Festinger and further explained by Rosenthal and Siegel. In the context of Barang, this dissonance occurs when traditional healing practices fails to yield the expected outcome. This paper explores how belief in magic and witchcraft can help people cope in their everyday methods of solving problems when fell short. Rosenthal and Siegel further argues that when people face situations full of uncertainty and stress, especially where scientific and practical methods seem ineffective, they resort or turn into the magical practices to regain their sense of control and ease their inner discomfort. Using examples from different cultures, the paper shows that magic isn't just about mysterious rituals. It also serves as a way to resolve tensions between what we know and what really happens in reality. Ultimately, this supports personal and social stability. Rather than discarding the belief, individuals might rationalize the failure by attributing it to factors such as incorrect rituals, insufficient faith, and maybe interventions of a more potent malevolent force. Third is the Filipino metaphysics based on the traditional healing practices, Espiritu 2022. Principles such as balik, predestination, visible and invisible dualism, and the performativity of words, Espiritu 2022 seeks to develop uniquely Filipino philosophical framework based on the country's traditional healing practices, instead of forcing these into the mold of Western science. This study argues that while Western medicine relies on biophysical model that treats the body as machine subject to empirical analysis, Filipino healing traditions operates in their own set of principles that have not yet been adequately defined. So on my right hand side, we can see the legal framework in the Philippines that plays a crucial role in framing the interplay between cultural beliefs and healthcare policies. So first we have the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 2, Section 5. This provision underscored the state's responsibility to promote peace, protect the individual rights, and ensure the general welfare, including the safeguarding of the citizens from potential harms of any cultural or traditional practices. Second is the Republic Act number 8243, or the Traditional and Alternative Medicine Act of 1957. By institutionalizing and regulating traditional healthcare practices, this law acknowledges of the indigenous healing practices, including supernatural explanations such as barang, and seeks to harmonize them with scientific and ethical healthcare standards. Third is the revised penal code, RA 3815, Article 2A2. This legal provision provides insights into how perceived threats linked to supernatural beliefs might intersect with issues of public order and conflict and with legal conflict, particularly in areas where. The fourth one is the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, Republic Act 9462. This law addresses psychological and emotional violence, including coercion and ostracization related to supernatural accusations. Women and children are often vulnerable in this context. So that's why they are provided with legal protection against potential harm of these cultural narratives. At the center of the framework is a method of compacted ethnography, which acts as a bridge connecting the theoretical and contextual inputs. Through immersive fieldwork and cultural observation, the study examines how knowledge systems and belief structures manifest in the real experiences of barang victims and their networks in the two mentioned towns. This approach allows for a holistic understanding of how illness and death are interpreted beyond the biomedical lens. The central analytical focus of the study is the examination of power knowledge and cognitive dynamics surrounding death and illness in two Bohol towns, Carmen and Valencia. Carmen and Pilar rather. So these points synthesizes the legal, psychological, and mathematical. From the analysis, two major implications emerge, one directed towards policy and the other towards Filipino metaphysical thought. Ultimately, the framework culminates in the specific focus of the study, the alleged barang victims and their surrounding network in Carmen and Pilar Bohol. This final point grounds the research in real human experience, bringing abstract theory and policy with the tangible realities of fear, belief, and survival communities where the spiritual and physical realms are deeply intertwined. Now let's move on to the statement of the problem. This study investigates how belief in barang, a form of sorcery blamed of illness and death, shapes individual perceptions, communal responses, and coping strategies in selected rural towns of Bohol. By combining Foucauldian discourse analysis with cognitive dissonance theory, it examines both structural forces that legitimizes supernatural explanations and the psychological processes that sustains them. Specifically, the research asks, number one, what are the facts surrounding cases of reported barang victims in Carmen and Pilar Bohol? This question provides a factual and empirical foundation for the study. By documenting specific barang cases, the study ensures that it is grounded in real-life narratives and not mere speculation. It sets establishing what actually occurred, including timelines, symptoms, witnesses, and community responses. These facts are essential for data interpretation using theoretical frameworks like discourse analysis and dissonance theory. Second one is what are the contrasting interpretations of the case by A, barang believers, B, exorcists, and C, psychologists or doctors. These questions foregrounds the core of the study investigation, the plurality of explanatory models. By comparing interpretations from different stakeholders, indigenous belief holders, religious authorities, and biomedical professionals, it reveals epistemological tensions that exist in the health and illness narratives. This helps illuminate how knowledge is constructed differently depending on the worldview and why conflicting explanations persist even in the face of modern medicine.
Now, let us explain briefly the title of our research. White Magic, Demonic Myth, Discourse and Dissonance Analysis of Divergent Explanatory Models of Barang Victims in Carmen and Pilar Bohol. So, perhaps this reflects the three main interpretation of supernaturals like Barang. in the research. So white magic, barang perhaps barang is viewed as a positive or helpful force. Demonic, in which barang is somewhat viewed as a form of evil spiritual attack. And myth, barang as non-real, explained through scientific reasoning or viewed as one of the superstitious. The study uses discourse analysis. The study will use discourse analysis to explore how these explanations are constructed in language and community practices, and dissonance analysis to explain the psychological tension individuals experience when navigating conflict beliefs about barang. And the focus is geographically specific to victims in Barang and Pilar municipalities. So, throughout history, people have often explained illness in supernatural terms when medical knowledge was limited. Across cultures, beliefs in witchcraft reflect local traditions, religious influence, and historical circumstances. In the Philippines, for example, kulam o barang refers to a form of sorcery in which a mamba barang known as sorcerer is believed to manipulate things such as ragdoll to inflict harm or cause death. So this belief has historically shaped health perception and social interactions in rural communities. Life histories of witchcraft victims in Indonesia and divergent representation of spirit possession in the Philippines have already been documented. So, competing indigenous, religious, and modern spiritual models have illuminated various illness in places like South Africa, Uganda, Arabia, and Ethiopia. Yet, an explanatory model of barang or kulam in the Philippines is still absent in the literature. Specifically, little is known about the complete explanation of barang victims in a local matter, more particularly in Bohol, and the application of these narratives to policy. And with that, this study seeks to fill that gap by closely examining the explanatory models associated with barang in Carmen and Pilar. So, the third question, what structural and psychological factors underlie the constructing indigenous, religious, and modern interpretation? So, this question perhaps bridges the macro and micro analysis, drawing from Foucault's theory of power knowledge. The structure refers to the historical, institutional, and socio-cultural forces that shape dominant discourses. Meanwhile, the dissonance theory would perhaps explain the psychological dynamics behind how individuals resolve the tension between traditional beliefs and rational medical knowledge. So, in this one, perhaps with this dual analysis, reveals not just what people may believe, but why and how they continue to do so amid conflicting systems of thought. The fourth one, what do policy experts recommend out of the finding of the study? So perhaps this question bridges the study into applied relevance by asking how public health, education, or social policy might engage with such beliefs. So it connects the theoretical insights with real-world actions, which is an essential goal of research conducted within the field of education, more particularly in social studies. And furthermore, policy recommendations derived from the grounded and localized knowledge can improve culturally responsive governance and community intervention. And 5, what implication do experts in Filipino philosophy find out to study to the quest for a Filipino metaphysics anchored on traditional healing practice? So this question situates the research within a broader intellectual movement toward developing a Filipino philosophy that values indigenous knowledge system. So, in short, this invites a philosophical inquiry into how traditional healing might inform or even challenge dominant Western metaphysical and scientific frameworks, potentially contributing to a decolonized Filipino epistemology.
Now we will move on to the significance of the study. The findings of this research will offer tangible benefits to multiple stakeholders. First, for age Barang victims and their families. It validates personal experiences and explores coping mechanisms, aiming to reduce stigma for local communities. It will benefit from a deeper understanding of how supernatural beliefs like Barang affect social dynamics and conflict. For healthcare professionals, including doctors, mental health practitioners, and social workers, it will gain cultural context to improve treatment approaches. For religious leaders and traditional healers, it will benefit from a clearer picture of how they navigate the intersection of ritual faith and modern medicines, opening pathways for partnership that honor local traditions while improving health outcomes. Finally, for future researchers in anthropology, sociology, psychology, and cultural studies can use this study as a foundation to explore the interaction of folklore, power dynamics, and psychology and health in Filipino society. For research methodology, research design. This study uses a qualitative approach with a compacted mode ethnographic design, involving an intensive short-term immersion in the research site over several days to a few weeks. The researcher closely observed everyday life rituals and interactions, aiming to capture both visible dynamics and underlying social structures. It integrates Foucauldian discourse analysis and dissonance theory to explore how belief in Barang are maintained through both social structures and personal psychology. Data will be collected through interviews, field notes, and observations, highlighting how various actors, from healers to doctors, interpret and influence Barang beliefs in everyday life.
For research environment, so we chose Carmen and Pilar, where two municipalities in Bohol province were selected to their documented prevalence victims of Barang. So now we move into participants. So we're going to use purposive sampling, so which to initially select participants who can directly address the study's core themes: cognitive dissonance, discourse and power, biomedicalizations, policy implications, and Filipino philosophy implications. And we're going to use a snowball samplings, which complements this by asking participants to refer other with relevant experiences and insights. 8 distinct participants categories are included to reflect the range of perspectives on Barang, from personal narratives to institutional responses. So, clear inclusions and exclusion criteria guide selection to maintain depth and relevance and rigor throughout data collections. So, in manuscript, this can be seen on page 15. And for participants categories, we're going to use inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. So, for research instrument, the primary instrument for data collection in the study, the researcher employing semi-structured interviews, we're going to use audio and video recordings and also field notes. For the research procedure, first, prior to data selections, the research team will secure formal, documented approvals from all relevant institutions and local authorities. Second, following this, explicit inclusions and exclusion criteria will be defined for participant selections, and the purposive sampling strategies and the snowball sampling technique will be implemented to target individuals whose experiences are most relevant to the study. And third, data gathering will be conducted through a combination of semi-structured interviews, focus groups, and participants' observations, with all interviews scheduled at locations selected by the participants to ensure a private and comfortable environment. Each meeting, lastly between 60 and 90 minutes, will be recorded using collaborative digital devices, and systematic field notes will be taken using a predefined templates that captures non-verbal cues, contextual details, and any notable interactions. And lastly, audio recordings will be transcribed verbatim using industry standards transcriptions software, and each transcript will be independently verified by a second researcher to ensure accuracy, with any discrepancies resolved through consensus. For the interview guide, this can be seen on page 41 to 44 in the manuscript. So that's all for my part. I will give you to Mr. Philip.